Four Horsemen are still considered one of professional wrestling's greatest factions ever, with fan interest reflected in the books and DVDs produced about them. However, whatever happened to the men who terrorized the grappling game as wrestling's original gang? Here's the lowdown on every single member of the Four Horsemen, and where they are now. Number 1. Dean Malenko. The man of 1,000 holes served in the final version of the Horsemen, adding a blend of rule-breaking and technical magnificence to the group alongside Ric Flair, Steve McMichael, Chris Benoit, and manager Arn Anderson. The Four Horsemen did not fare well during the Monday Night War, and this final version disbanded less than a year after forming in September of 1998. Malenko would stay with WCW, but joined Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and Perry Saturn in jumping ship to the WWF in 2000 as the Radicals. As the invasion angle began to heat up in the summer of 2001, Malenko disappeared from WWF programming, but worked as a backstage agent. In November of 2010, Malenko suffered a heart attack, but survived. In a 2011 interview, Malenko recalled discovering he had 100% blockage in his heart's main artery, noting, "They call it the Widowmaker. It's actually what John Ritter died of." Malenko currently works as a backstage agent in the WWE and notes, "This was a little bit of an odd transition, because after 20 years of going to the arena with my tights and boots, now I'm going with a pen and a notepad, but I'm really happy I did it." Number 2. Curt Hennig. When Arn Anderson was forced to retire due to nerve damage in his arm, the founding member of the Four Horsemen gave his spot to former WWF superstar Mr. Perfect, with fans wondering if Hennig would be the final component the Horsemen needed to take out the New World Order. Unfortunately, Hennig turned out to be a wolf in the fold, turning on the Horsemen during their War Games match at 1997's Fall Brawl against the NWO. What could have been a great run in the Horsemen turned into a mediocre time, as he became just one of the NWO's seeming cast of thousands. The only highlight in Hennig's career was during his time as a member of the West Texas Rednecks. He returned to the WWE in 2002, but was fired after that year's plane ride from hell. See our Behind the Titantron for more details. Sadly, Hennig died on the 10th of February 2003 at the age of only 44. Number 3. Jeff Jarrett. This is a controversial pick because fans are still undecided on whether Jeff Jarrett ever officially joined the Four Horsemen. Double J entered WCW in 1996, playing as a free agent up for grabs between the Four Horsemen and the New World Order. Jarrett eventually joined the Horsemen, but was kicked out before long. Some Horsemen purists, including Horseman Arn Anderson, claim Jarrett was never an official member, pointing out he was never beat down after quitting the group. Whatever his official status, Jarrett bounced back and forth between the WWF and WCW during the Monday Night War, staying with WCW until its demise. Jarrett enjoyed a long run in TNA as its world champion and as a main eventer. In 2018, Jeff Jarrett was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Number 4. Steve Mongo McMichael. This Super Bowl champion earned controversy during his stint as a color commentator on Monday Night Nitro, whether it was bringing his dog with him or his oftentimes bizarre commentary. However, that changed when Mongo stepped into the ring alongside fellow NFL player Kevin Green against the Four Horsemen's Arn Anderson and Ric Flair. The match saw Mongo sell out Green for a Halliburton briefcase full of cash, and he joined the Horsemen, providing some raw power to the team. Never a great wrestler, he brought a certain je ne sais quoi to the Horsemen, and is still highly regarded by Ric Flair for his Horseman run. Mongo would leave wrestling and work as a sports personality, operated a restaurant, ran unsuccessfully for mayor of Romeoville, Illinois, and coached the Chicago Slaughter Indoor Football League. Number 5. Chris Benoit. In 1995, the Horsemen got their 4th member when Chris Benoit joined the group, making arguably the faction's best incarnation since Barry Windham's tenure in the group. Benoit remained in the Horsemen through several incarnations. He jumped ship to WWE, including a run as WWE Champion, but while the circumstances are unclear, Benoit took his wife and son's life before killing himself in 2007. Number 6. Brian Pillman. After Paul Roma's disastrous run as a Horseman, anyone would have seemed better. This time, the Horsemen got a fantastic member, with Flying Brian Pillman adding his wild man gimmick to the Horsemen. Rumour has it, Pillman's run in the Horsemen was going to lead a rift between the Horsemen, with Pillman and Chris Benoit forming their own Horseman group to feud with Ric Flair and Arn Anderson's version. Instead, Pillman duped Eric Bischoff into releasing him from his contract, and he joined the WWF before an unknown heart defect ended his life. Number 7. Paul Roma. Sadly, even the Four Horsemen had their moments of questionable choices. In 1993, WCW was reportedly ready to bring Tully Blanchard back to the company, only for talks to collapse. WCW went with Plan B, as in bad. The company brought in mid-card talent Paul Roma to portray a horseman. With the right amount of rehabilitation, Roma could have been built up, then inserted into the group. Instead, WCW brought in a guy arguably best known for jobbing into wrestling's elite group. Roma left the Horsemen to team with Paul Orndorff in Pretty Wonderful. While Roma spent many years bad-mouthing the Horsemen, his stance seems to have softened. In a 2017 interview, he recalled his time with the group. "I like going with it, and I thought it was a great honor. It was Dusty Rhodes telling me that they were going to make me a horseman, and I walked out on stage and I was calling Dusty's name, and he called out to me, 'Pretty Paul,' and he said, 'Come over here and give me a hug,' and that is what I will call you, Pretty Paul Roma, one of the Horsemen." Nobody knew about it, and it was totally kayfabed. When I walked into the offices down in Atlanta, the people looked at me like they had seen a ghost, and it was like, what the hell is this guy doing here? It was cool. I got along with Arn really well. I tried to get along with Rick, and it seemed like I did for a while, but it was hard to tell. Ole was kind of in that rough spot in between, and would say coming out of the ring, and it was, "We don't do that. The Horsemen don't do that. The Horsemen don't sound like that." It was always something, but when I was with Arn, it was never a problem. We traveled together, and Arn would stay quiet, and Rick ran the show, and I get it because he's the big deal. We just needed to gel. I tried, but we needed to gel. Roma runs Paradise Alley Professional Wrestling, a Connecticut-based promotion affiliated with a wrestling school of the same name. Number 8. Sid Vicious. One of wrestling's biggest men and oddest individuals, Sid joined the Horsemen in 1990, adding some much-needed power and size to the group. Although Vicious seemed like an odd fit, he served in the group well, with his powerbomb helping the Horsemen out of a jam more than once. The mercurial Vicious bounced back and forth between the WWF and WCW, with Vicious reportedly taking off time to play softball rather than wrestle. According to Vicious, the softball story was much ado about nothing. Why somebody would worry about me playing softball, but they did. If you think about it, a lot of people said, "Well, Sid, you're an athlete, you could hurt yourself," and I understand that, but I wasn't playing the field, I was only DHing, and you really don't get hurt doing that. While Vicious claims he never took the time off from wrestling to play softball, softball was nothing compared to the trouble he got to in 1993 during an incident in the United Kingdom where he stabbed Arn Anderson and was let go. Nonetheless, Vicious was big enough that he found work in both the WWF and WCW, winning world championships in each. A freak in-ring accident seemingly ended Vicious's grappling career when he fractured his leg. He eventually recovered, working on the independent scene until retiring last summer. Number 9. Sting. Wait a minute, you're telling me one of the Four Horsemen's biggest enemies was once a horseman? Believe it or not, the Stinger joined the Horsemen during Ric Flair's babyface run against the J-Tex Corporation. Of course, the angle was designed to set up a feud between Sting and the NWA World Champion Ric Flair when Sting earned a title shot and the Horsemen told him to drop it. Sting was booted out of the Horsemen, ultimately defeating Flair for the match. When we last saw Sting, he had returned to the WWE, working a short program with Triple H and then Seth Rollins until an injury ended his career. In 2016, the Stinger was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Number 10. Barry Windham. Barry Windham went from being one of the Horsemen's biggest rivals to joining the elite group. He had teamed with former Horseman Lex Luger, winning the WCW World Tag Team Championship. However, Windham betrayed Luger during a match against Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, turning heel and helping Blanchard and Anderson regain their titles. He served as a Horseman on 2 occasions and would win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. However, Windham's career peaked and his last notable run was in WCW as part of the West Texas Rednecks. In 2011, Windham suffered a heart attack that nearly took his life. In a 2018 interview, he recalled the incident. "I just went to bed and I didn't get up. It was a strange deal. I had to completely learn how to walk again. My left side just quit on me. That's why they initially thought it was a stroke." Now recovered, Windham operates his own business and his legacy lives on. Number 11. Lex Luger. Originally an associate of the Horsemen, Luger was brought in to take Ole Anderson's place. His run in the Horsemen helped him work alongside some of the best workers and talkers, but the jury's still out on how much they were able to help him. Luger eventually left the Horsemen, becoming WCW World Champion on multiple occasions. His life spiraled out of control due to personal demons, with the total package serving time for probation violations. However, he straightened out his life and counsels WWE superstars on nutrition and fitness. Number 12. James J. Dillon. The Horsemen's executive director, notice we didn't say manager, helped guide them through their greatest successes, including their original run and subsequent incarnations including the Lex Luger era and Barry Windham era. The Horsemen lost a step when Dillon left WCW for WWF to work in the front office, but he remained an important part of their legacy and was inducted with the Horsemen into the WWE Hall of Fame. His career bounced around when he left the WWE after a 40% pay cut and other issues, joining WCW. After some financial difficulties, he left wrestling to take a job as a corrections officer. He returned to the wrestling game and currently hosts a weekly podcast on MLW Radio and wrote a memoir, Wrestlers Are Like Seagulls. Number 13. Tully Blanchard. Although second-generation wrestler Tully Blanchard was a founding member of the Horsemen, he actually battled Ric Flair early on during his run in Jim Crockett Promotions, with J.J. Dillon hoping to help Blanchard append Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Eventually, Blanchard joined the Horsemen and stayed with the group until jumping ship to the WWF with Arn Anderson. A failed drug test kept Blanchard from returning to WCW, and he eventually found Jesus, forming Tully Blanchard's Ministries. Number 14. Arn Anderson. The Four Horsemen's enforcer helped found wrestling's supergroup, but sadly, his talents on the mic and in-ring usually played second fiddle to Ric Flair in singles competition. Still, that didn't stop AA from having a storied career in tag team action with Ole Anderson and Tully Blanchard. Arn was forced to retire prematurely after a neck injury, but remained a presence with the Horsemen. Long considered one of the industry's best talkers and workers, Anderson now works behind the scenes at the WWE. Number 15. Ole Anderson. A founding member of the Four Horsemen, Ole Anderson's wrestling roots go further back to his team with Gene Anderson as part of Jim Crockett's legendary heel team, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, seen as inspiring the Horsemen. Anderson eventually left the Horsemen and worked behind the scenes for WCW until a falling out with Eric Bischoff. Long considered one of wrestling's grumpiest old men, Ole is known for his rants on other wrestlers, including former Horseman Ric Flair. Although he's saddled with health problems, including multiple cirrhosis, he appears at wrestling conventions and isn't above appearing with the other Horsemen. And number 16. The Nature Boy Ric Flair. The Horsemen evolved from Slick Rick's alliance with his kayfabe cousins Arn and Ole Anderson of the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, laying the groundwork for the groundbreaking faction still revered today. The addition of Tully Blanchard and manager James J. Dillon completed the ensemble, and the Four Horsemen were born. Although Ric Flair's in-ring career finally ended, he remains in the spotlight, whether it's his ESPN documentary, the recent health scare that almost sent him to the Great Squared Circle in the sky, or his many business ventures, including his new line of suits. Well guys, there you have it, the whereabouts on every single member of the Four Horsemen. Some gone, but none of them forgotten. Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments section below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.